For more than half a century, the Philippine Air Force has relied on one aircraft as its backbone of mobility, the C-130 Hercules. Few other platforms have carried such a combination of symbolic and practical weight. For the Philippines, an archipelago of more than 7,000 islands, the ability to move troops, supplies, and aid is not simply a logistical question, but a matter of national resilience. The Hercules has been at the center of this story, bridging the gap between military necessity and humanitarian response, while also serving as a barometer of Manila's broader strategic alignment with Washington. In 2025, as the country begins to receive its first C-130J Super Hercules, it is worth asking whether this transition signals a fundamental shift in capability, or whether it is simply the continuation of a long dependence on American-supplied platforms. The Philippine Air Force first received C-130s in the 1960s, part of a wider U.S. strategy to shape Allied militaries during the Cold War. At that time, Manila's defense posture was heavily influenced by the presence of American bases at Clark and Subic. The Hercules was not just a transporter, it was a visible symbol of American military assistance. For decades, these aircraft shuttled between Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, ensuring that troops could be shifted quickly during counterinsurgency campaigns against the New People's Army or separatist groups in the south. More importantly, they became synonymous with disaster relief. In a country battered annually by typhoons and earthquakes, the Hercules became the first aircraft to land on devastated airstrips, carrying food, medical supplies, and evacuees. This humanitarian dimension made the C-130 perhaps the most publicly recognized aircraft in the Philippines, even more than fighter jets that rarely appeared in civilian life. The post-Cold War era only deepened this reliance. When the United States closed its bases in 1991, the Philippine Air Force lost access to American rapid deployment and had to rely more heavily on its own limited lift. The Hercules fleet aged, but no real replacements were available. Budgets were consistently diverted to more immediate security challenges, and the C-130s soldiered on. The image of a weathered Philippine Air Force Hercules landing on a battered runway after Typhoon Haiyan in 2013 perfectly captured both the reliability and the vulnerability of the fleet. The aircraft could still perform its mission, but each sortie underscored the cost of operating platforms long past their prime. By the 2010s, the problem became acute. Several accidents, including a tragic crash in 2021 in Sulu that killed more than 50 people, highlighted the risks of maintaining an overworked fleet. At times, the Air Force was left with only 1 or 2 operational C-130s, leaving the country dangerously exposed during natural disasters. The Modernization program known as Horizon 2 attempted to address this by securing additional units, both through U.S. excess defense articles and direct purchases. Yet the imbalance was obvious. While Manila talked about submarines and multi-role fighters, its basic airlift capacity was stretched to the breaking point. Without a reliable transport backbone, the ability to deploy those future high-tech assets would remain theoretical. This is where the C-130J enters the story. The Super Hercules is not revolutionary in concept. It is an evolution of a proven design. But the upgrades are substantial. With more efficient engines, digital avionics, and greater range and payload, the C-130J offers the Philippine Air Force a significant step forward. For a country that must project presence from Luzon to Palawan and across to disputed areas in the West Philippine Sea, the ability to move forces quickly and consistently is essential. In humanitarian terms, the C-130J can deliver more aid faster, reach farther islands, and sustain operations for longer periods. In military terms, it provides the mobility needed to support Marines armed with BrahMos missiles, to reinforce air bases with spare parts and ammunition, and to sustain troops in Mindanao or the Spratly Islands. The value of the C-130J goes beyond technical performance. Strategically, it signals the deepening of the Philippine-US alliance. Manila did not seek a European alternative, nor did it entertain options from other suppliers. The Hercules is not only a familiar aircraft, but also one embedded in a network of interoperability with American, Japanese, and Australian forces. In combined exercises like Balikatan, the ability of Philippine C-130Js to plug directly into Allied logistics chains will be invaluable. This is a platform that does not merely fly supplies. It embeds the Philippine Air Force into the architecture of regional defense cooperation. There are, however, challenges. The C-130J is expensive to operate, and the Philippine defense budget remains constrained. Each new aircraft requires trained crews, maintenance facilities, and a steady flow of spare parts. Accidents in the past have shown how a single loss can drastically reduce available lift. Moreover, the focus on transport aircraft competes with high-profile projects like submarines or fighter jets. Policymakers face a perennial dilemma. Should scarce funds be spent on the glamorous assets that promise deterrence against China, or on the workhorse logistics platforms that quietly make the entire military function? The answer is that both are necessary, but the tension will remain. Looking toward 2030, if the current modernization plans succeed, the Philippines could field a fleet of several C-130Js alongside upgraded C-130Hs. This would create a genuine air mobility backbone for the armed forces. In practical terms, it would allow Manila to conduct sustained operations during typhoon season without relying excessively on foreign airlift. It would give the military the ability to surge reinforcements to contested outposts in the West Philippine Sea. And it would cement the Philippines' role in regional humanitarian operations, enhancing its diplomatic credibility as well as its military resilience. The Hercules is an unsung hero. It will never dominate headlines in the way that submarines or fighter jets do. Yet without it, the Philippine Armed Forces would be immobile, and immobility in an archipelagic state is the fastest route to strategic irrelevance. The C-130J will not transform the Philippines into a major military power, but it can ensure that the country's forces are present where and when they are needed. In the end, deterrence is not just about firepower. It is about the ability to project and sustain that firepower. For the Philippines, the Hercules remains the indispensable enabler of both defense and disaster response. And so the question remains, as the Philippines moves deeper into Horizon 3 of its modernization program, should the country prioritize more investment into platforms like the C-130J, which underpin every aspect of defense and humanitarian relief, or should it gamble on prestige assets like submarines and multi-role fighters? The answer will shape not just the structure of the Philippine Air Force, but the resilience of the entire nation in the turbulent years ahead.